Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is part 3 of our bouncing ball. So we've got the main keyframes right now. We've got frame 1, and then frame 8 and 9 as the down position, and frame 16 as up position. Now that you feel more comfortable, I'm not going to have to drag on these videos about showing you how to cut and paste and all that stuff. So what I'm going to show you now is the in-betweens, the keyframes that we're going to add squash and stretch. Okay, so we want the ball as it goes down, when it hits the ground, we want it to squash. So this controller basically will let you go forward, back, and it controls the ball and all that stuff in the translate. You can also hit the E key, which rotates. Okay, we don't need to rotate the ball this time. So then we've got, this is called the squash controller, or ball animation. This lets us animate the ball. Now this does allow us to, if we click on this guy, it allows us to squash and stretch. Now we can't do it here, meaning I can't take this and go and hit the R key and scale it. What it will do is it has an attribute that allows us to do it over here on the upper right hand side where it says squash anim. And if I highlight this and then I middle mouse button in my viewport, I can squash this, which is really, really cool. Okay, so this parameter lets us actually squash and stretch in real time if we want to. Okay, which is very cool, holding down the middle mouse button. But there are times where we're going to want to select it and we're going to type in the numeric values. Okay, so when it goes down to frame 8, we're going to squash it at -0.2. So I'm going to type in -0.2. Okay, that gives us a good start of a squash, right? Because of the ball hitting the ground. So I am going to go in here and I can set the squash and stretch and click on key. Okay, now when you don't keyframe, since this is something new we've keyframed and we're at frame 8, what's going to happen is it thinks that it will be squashed at the top because I didn't set a keyframe at the top at unsquashed, meaning 0. So I'm going to scrub back to frame 1 and I'm going to click on this frame and squash and the squash stretch attribute and hit 0 and enter. Okay, now I can right click over it and go key selected. So now I can scrub it and it will squash. Okay, but the problem is here is that it's anticipating the squash before it hits the ground, and that looks unrealistic. So it's anticipating hitting the ground, and we haven't hit the ground yet. So what we have to do is we have to have a keyframe that is going to not squash. Okay, so I'm going to go to frame 3. And I am going to set this at 0. Okay, because it's wanting to squash already. And so I set a keyframe so it does not squash yet. Okay, and the thing is, when a ball goes down, it's going to elongate this way. Let me show you. So it's going to, I'm going to go to frame 4 and hold down the middle mouse button. It's going to elongate a little bit as it goes down. I'm not going to go super crazy with it. Something around maybe, I don't know. Let's see. I've got my keyframe on. I probably want to turn that off. I got my automatic keyframe on, so I'm going to turn that off. And I am going to right click over this and go to delete. So ball's going down, and from here I want it to elongate. So at frame 7, I'm going to go in here and elongate it right before it hits the ground, right? That would make for an interesting animation. So I'm going to type in 0.2 on that. 0.2, okay? And I need to put a keyframe in there. So I'm going to go ahead and key that. So I'm going to right click over this and go to key selected. So what's going to happen is I'm going to move the ball, like I'm going to scrub it down. And once it hits past 3, it's going to elongate like this. Now, the question is, it did 2.9, which I didn't want to do. I want to do 0.2, 0.2, there we go. And keyframe that, there we go. All right, from 7, okay. So 7, it's elongated, right? And then 8, it's what hits the ground. So this is kind of what it looks like. So it's going to elongate, and then, so we got some time for the ball to understand what's happening, and then it kind of stretches out with speed, and then it hits, it's getting close to hitting the ground, and then it squashes right when it hits the ground. So that's kind of good. So it looks like that. Okay. Now we can make changes to these keyframes at any time. If we don't like the way it looks or if it's too slow, we can make those changes. And I'll show you how, okay? So right now I'm just scrubbing it. And what I'm going to do after 8, we should have one for 9. Okay, so I'm going to click on this guy, which is our controller for up and down and front and back and right to right, up, down, front, back, side to side. We're going to go to frame 8, but we need to move this down because I don't think it's hitting the ground. Because once we squished it, so I'm going to go to the side view here. You notice that that ball is not hitting the ground because we squished it. So we need to make sure at frame 8 that is down, touching the ground. Okay, there you go. And you want to set a keyframe. So we're going to go ahead and set that keyframe on that one. There we go. So I go up and it hits the ground. Boom, great. And then frame 9, the same kind of thing. But let's go to the perspective view and let's click on this guy again. So we got to frame at that, and then we're really going to squish it when it hits the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and squish it even more. And we're going to be careful not to go too far. So I'm going to go 0.4, negative 0.4 on that one. Hit enter. Here we go. And of course, set a keyframe. So right click and key selected. So don't forget that. So set the keys. So now it's going to be going. The thing is, it looks like it's going back up again. Okay, when I scrub back between 8 and 9. It's because 9 is not hitting the ground. So I need to go back to the front view. I'm going to click on the controller, the other controller, and move that down so it touches the bottom. Okay. All right. This is important, okay, that we be really careful. And sometimes I get really, really close to see if it's touching. And I'm going to go ahead and right click over and key selected. I'm going to go to frame 8 and make sure it doesn't move when I'm going back and forth. It looks really good. There we go. So now we've got it going from frame 1. We're scrubbing it all the way down. It's elongating at the very bottom. Hits the ground, squishes, okay? And then it comes back up again, okay? Well, the question is, we need it to get back to where it was. So frame 10, this should be now not squished and stretched anymore. So let's go ahead and click on squish and stretch mode, and we're going to set it at 0, okay? And hit enter, and then go ahead and right click over it and go key selected. So now we got something that looks like this. So now we're going to go scrub, hits the ground, then comes back up again. Okay? Hits the ground, comes back up again. So that looks pretty good so far. And we're at frame 10 now. You notice that we need to kind of expand it back out. So I'm going to give it a couple frames, maybe frame 12. And I'm going to squish and stretch that the other way. So I'm going to do, let's say 0.2. 0.2, hit enter. And that's going to expand it back up again, like it's moving up and stretching up as it moves with acceleration. Okay, something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and right click over and go to key selected. So now I've got it accelerating, hitting the ground, going back to normal at frame 10, and then 11 and 12. Now it shoots back up again. Okay, at frame 16. Now at frame 16 now it should go back to normal. So we are going to want to make sure that squish and stretch is set to 0. Hit enter and then right click over this and go to key selected. So if we play this, the whole thing now, hits the ground, here we go. And if we scrub it, we can go a little bit slower. It's gonna stretch out. It gains momentum. It hits the ground, squishes, goes back up again, gets momentum, and stretches out as it goes up, and then it goes back into the shape it was before in frame 16. So to really see what it looks like, because it's really hard to tell with all these controllers on it, let's go ahead and turn off the controller. So get into your layer editor, go Control A, and just turn off the visibility on the ball animation controller. So turn that off. So now I can play the animation from the beginning. We're going to loop it and see how it looks. Okay. All right. So we've got squish and stretch, but it still looks like a mechanical object. It looks like it's somebody's just forcing it down. Okay, it's a constant speed up and down. Okay, squish and stretch looks great. I like that. So we need to have ease in and ease out. So the ease in is when you drop a ball, the gravity, it gains momentum. So when you drop it, it's going to be slower because it's accelerating, right? So we're showing it's accelerating with the deformed ball, okay? Right, and then we see it decelerating and then accelerating again, okay? So we need kind of an ease in as we go down, and then it hits, it gets its fastest acceleration, hits the ground, rebounds back up again, and then slow out. So ease in and then slow out. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to have to introduce you to the animation graph editor. So I'll have to turn those back on again. We have to be able to see those before we can manipulate them. So whenever you keyframe something, you got to actually have the object that's keyframed selected. Okay. So we are going to do acceleration. So we're just going to do, let's just call this the transpose, where we're going to move it, translate the ball, which is in Y. So I'm going to click on that and go to Windows, Animation Editors, and Graph Editor. And this allows us to see what we have in the graph. As you can see, we're going to talk more about the graph. And I have, make sure you look in my lessons, all the things that you can do with the graph editor. There's a ton of stuff. And this is where you're going to be basically in after you create your keyframes and polishing and changing timing if you need to. And this is a great tool, great graph. Okay. So if you hover over, you can see the different types of tangents. This is called a tangent. So it's basically your keyframe. In Graphic Editor, it's called a tangent. But you can call it a keyframe if you want to. But that's your keyframe. That's your tangent. And these are the tangents that I have here. Okay? All right. So what we have, since we have two frames together, is they're not quite aligned. They might, if you get really close, I'm using my middle mouse button to zoom in. You can see this little dip here, okay? And what we have, what we're seeing here, is it's going to be a constant, and if I move this up a little bit, and I play the animation on the playhead, it will play it on here in a loop. You can see? So if I look at this, this is in the Y. If I click on the translate Y, we are seeing just the translate Y. Now if I would hit the S key to key all the frames, you would have all kinds of keyframes here. And this just keeps your graph editor really clean. If you know you're only going to be animating in the Y direction, why hit the S key and then have all these keyframes, okay? So I can scrub this way too, meaning that I can move this over a little bit, okay? And I can scrub these keyframes, all right? So one of the things that's fun, because I know this is a spline curve, I've got these types of things. If I select everything, I can go in here and I can add a spline tangent. That's what that looks like, okay? I'm going to go Control C. I've got a clamped tangent, okay, Control Z. I've got a linear tangent, which is kind of go boom, boom. And if I play that, okay, it looks like nothing's happened, but it is definitely mechanical. That would be like a robot, okay. The other way was nicer, so I'm going to go Control Z again. There we go. So we got a linear tangent, we've got a flat tangent. Okay, that flattens the tangents out. We've got a step tangent, so if I play that, you can see that it steps. It just shows you the keyframes, which is pretty crazy. And I actually use stepped quite a bit when I'm doing character animation, okay? Because that just shows you the poses and timing of the pose, okay? That's kind of nice. Anyway, so if I want to go back, then, okay, then I can go, and if I click on this, we can click on plateau. And that's basically what we had before. Let's see, we also had, there we go. This is flat tangents, and we've got the plateau. And those two are just about the same. But that's what we started off with. Okay? All right. So we can see a little bit of a dip here. It's curved, and it goes right here, and we'll fix that. We do not want this curved here because it's hitting the ground. We don't want it moving at all. And this is the move. This is basically the Y direction from 0 from the ground up. Okay, that's 1 unit up, and that's 2 units up. So to prove that, let me show you what I mean. So if I go in here, and you can do the same thing I'm doing. So if I wanted to start the ball higher, I can just move it here, and I can hold the shift key, and lets me go straight up and down. You can see that this is the height. Okay, that's the height. So if you want to change height, of course it's in translate here, and you'll have to be in the translate. I'm going to hold the shift key so if I don't, otherwise I'm going to be all over the place here. Okay, so if I hold the shift key, that allows me to go up and move up in one axis. Okay, I'm going to go back to where we started. All right, so now you know what a tangent is. Now you know these splines. We also have, and there's a bunch of them here. I'm just going to hit a couple of them here. The break tangent. We're going to actually learn more about the break tangent. Okay, so with this, I'm going to go ahead and open this up all the way so we can really focus on this. So with the tangent, we have these bars. Okay, this is like a Bezier curve. Okay, with a Bezier curve, we can select one edge of this and move it up and down, which is really nice. So you can change that curve. Okay, what I want to do, okay, is I want to move this up. Okay, but you can see that this is a problem if I do that, because if I go back, if I take this and move that down, it's going to move this down. Okay, so if I want to do something that kind of manipulates the curve to do what I want up here, I'm going to have to break this tangent. Okay, otherwise I'm going to have all kinds of problems, because this is what I want to do. I want to take this and I want to move this up, and this is going to give us that ease in. So it's going to start off slow and then gain momentum until it hits the ground. The problem with that is it's going to go through the floor. See, it dips down. It means that right now there's the floor right here. Okay, and it dips down a little bit, but because that's where it needs to be for the floor, right? So with this, if I go up like that, then what's going to happen is that the ball's going to go through the floor, and I'll show you. This will look really good right here, right? But it's going to go through the floor, and I got to be careful not to go too much because the ball will go up and then go back down. So I'll show you in just a second. I'll prove it to you. So I'll do this extreme here, and the ball will go up and then go back down again. So I'll show you what we have so far on the side. Play the animation. Okay, so the ball's going to go up and then back down again. It's going to go through the floor too as well when it hits the ground. On frame 9, it's going to go through the floor. Okay. We don't want it to. Okay. So it's not too bad. It's not too bad. All right. So, all right. So now we're going to go back to here, and this is how we fix that. If we don't want it to do that, we'll take that. Let's go back to what we had before. Here we go. We want to break that tangent. In fact, we want to break both of these tangents at the bottom. So I'm going to click on both of them and click on break. And then I'm going to select this tangent handle and move it up. I'm going to select this tangent handle and move that up. So it looks like kind of like a bird flying. Here's the wings, you know. Anyway, so with these two, those are good. Okay, I can actually make them really good by just going, by going linear, but I don't want to do that either. So can I flatten that? Maybe a little bit more. Let me try. Let me select that and flatten it a little bit more. Maybe select this one, move that up a little bit so it flattens a little bit. Okay. So it looks kind of like that. And I'm going to go ahead and close this. And let's rotate that around, and let's go ahead and play the animation. There we go, and that's much better because we're getting ease in and ease out. All right, so let's play it without the controllers on there. So I'm going to turn those off. Click off so we just kind of have a nice place to play this and play it. I think we got a good ball bouncing animation, and we've got it looped. All right, that's good. All right, perfect. So we're done with this now, and now we need to do a play blast.